Welcome back to Kick Up Flicks, guys. My name is Chris D, and today we're going over Kong Skull Island. And you know what? It was a really good movie back in 2017. It eventually is going to lead up to the new trailer that just came out that I saw on YouTube, Kong versus Godzilla. But I'm not exactly too sure if that's a really good matchup, just due to the fact that of some of the things that we saw in this movie. But if you have not seen this movie yet, I would advise you to go see it, because there probably will be some spoilers in here, or there probably will be a lot of spoilers about this movie, because we're just going to talk about it because, you know, it's a pretty old movie. Kong is set at the end of the Vietnam War, where everybody's being actually called back. Mr. Houston, who's being actually played by Corey Hawkins, and Mr. Randa, who's being played by John Goodman, is trying to get over there as soon as they can. They don't have a lot of time, so they need to convince everything that they can, and pretty much the way that they end up doing it is saying, hey, guess what? You know, we need to be the first one to actually find this land and explore it before everybody else does, because it's not going to be long before the Russians actually find it with their own satellite. So long story short, they get over there and they run into none other than Kong himself. Kong does not actually like the helicopters and everything going over there, because they are dropping bombs and, you know, trying to show the lay of the land to prove this hollow earth theory that you actually end up finding out later on in the movie. The only downfall is they didn't expect Kong, and well, Kong just came and destroyed everybody. In my opinion, I think everyone should have died during that attack, because he pretty much wiped out everything. However, we did find out something very, very important, that Kong cannot take anything too sharp that is rotating very fast, because he does take a lot of damage on quickly. And not only that, but the humans, or the Lieutenant Colonel, who was played by Samuel L. Jackson, who has this need for combat. He ends up noticing it, that Kong does bleed, and it becomes like his number one passion to go through this. So leading into this, the actors actually did a fantastic job. I thoroughly enjoyed watching the movie myself. There was nothing I can say, hey, this doesn't make a lot of sense. I think the only part that didn't make sense was Mr. Randa's story about being on the ship and being attacked, and, you know, how this monster out at sea was like a monster with no heart, and it was only built to destroy. So that is one aspect of the movie that really didn't make sense to me. I know the hired mercenary Tom Hiddleston, who played the character Captain Conrad, he actually played a really good part. I mean, well grounded the whole entire time, pretty much kept focused, and, you know, wanted to keep everybody safe, because that's pretty much what he was hired for, and he did a really good job for it. Samuel L. Jackson's part didn't necessarily make sense to me when it came to Kong. I mean, if you really think about it in the long aspect, you know, in the beginning that he did lose somebody important to him, and he didn't want to go home. He wanted to continue fighting the war, and he just wanted to find a primary enemy, and that ended up becoming Kong. Now, wouldn't you think, you're going through and you're bombing anything? You're not looking to see if there's anything indigenous. They didn't even land to see if there's people around there. They're just bombing everything. Who knows how many people or indigenous people that they potentially killed, and the type of animals that they killed while they were there too, because as you saw, they were just destroying everything, you know, opening up holes in the ground, which also proved the hollow ground theory in this movie. And they were, well, one scientist, Houston, was actually really excited about it, and the other scientists as well, because it was also a research expedition. Now, trying to focus on the attitude of why the enemy is the enemy, and no one can see that, you know, the Lieutenant Colonel wasn't in his right mind as far as trying to go through this aspect of an attack. There was no reasoning behind of why do we have to destroy Kong. And I think one reason I can kind of give to it was that Kong does not need to exist in a world of man, only because it's ancient and it's old. And though he's the last of his kind, there's no reason to preserve it in his eyes. And on top of that, Kong is very destructive when he wants to be, but at the same time, very, very vulnerable to a lot of different things. Now that leads me into Hank Marlow. Hank Marlow is this guy right here who is John Riley, and he played a really funny part. I actually really did enjoy his like comedic lift. It was kind of like awkward for me a little bit at first. I didn't exactly get it, but then when I started to understand his part a little bit more, being stuck on land for a very long time with a group of people who don't speak at all, but kind of communicate through staring, if you will. So he's only had the ability to talk to himself throughout almost throughout the whole entire time, because the guy he landed with at the beginning of the movie ended up dying to a skull crusher, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. So this group here was actually a pretty smart the way they kind of fought, and I'm actually kind of surprised how they all survived. Speaking of surviving, a lot of it was that they had a reduction of sight throughout, the movie, especially when it came to combat. So in my mind, it would be fairly ineffective, and also their weapons proved highly ineffective for most of the things that they fought on that island as well. Though their weapons were ineffective, they did prove to slow down the enemy, including Kong himself. He did have to block a lot of the bullet fire, a lot of the explosions or anything, and he always had to pick up some kind of weapon in order to defend himself, which proves the type of intelligence that Kong actually would have to pick things up or move things or use them as weapons throughout the movie. Now, one thing that kind of got me was this scene right here. I know she's a photographer. She played Mason in the movie. Brie Larson played Mason in the movie, and though I know she plays a photographer, I know a photographer is good, even if you're a professional. But you're not that good. I mean, to fire a flare into a monster's eye, and a flare normally has like an arc, from what I understand or from what I've ever seen, and you're gonna aim it directly in the monster's eye, which is a really good shot, and watch it explode, which is my amazing. And the fact that the monster can even keep going after that because of how hot it burns was a really good shot. One thing I did definitely like is the native people. The people in their area, how they weren't put this time as savages who eat people, burn people, or sacrifice people. They are just people that have worshipped Godzilla. They are people that have worshipped King Kong for a very long time, for generations and generations. And they even had in the whole entire mural thing with all the rocks explaining how they feared him, and then they realized that, oh wait, he does protect us. So then they looked up to him as a god, or him and his family, up until the eradication of the Kongs, I guess, if you will. So we know that King Kong is the last one to survive. But one thing, going back to the people, I actually really do like how much time that they put into the paint, and how much they put into worn they look, and how natural they are, and how well they blend into their society. One thing I definitely could wish for is I wish they would show more diversity in Kong when it came to the natural life. I mean, when I saw this beast right here, that is behind me, I thought it was actually kind of amazing to see how peaceful and tranquil it actually kind of was. It didn't end up being my favorite, because my favorite was actually the Mantis. I loved the Mantis. I thought I was going to eat him, but it didn't. It ended up being very peaceful, and it kind of made me think of Groot a little bit, somewhat. But, without the hyper intelligence of a killing tree. Just wanted to go out and be a log somewhere else in peace and quiet. And my one true thought, though, that could be is, and I want your opinion on this, so let me know down below, is that I think it ran away because it ended up seeing the Skull Crusher, and it itself didn't want to die. I think that's why it kind of ran away. It said, you know what? I see something that's stronger than me, I'ma just leave. But wrapping up to this movie, in the very future, I think sometime this year or next year, they're coming out with King Kong versus Godzilla. I'm not too sure how that battle is going to go, because if you actually look at Godzilla, he can take a lot of missiles, he can take nukes, he can take electrical lightning bolts, he fires radiation from his mouth pretty much, beams of energy, and Godzilla is pretty much hard to even cut. I haven't even seen him bleed in any movie that I've ever seen him watch before. He does have scars, and he always gets back up no matter who he fights. King Kong, on the other hand, well, throughout the different movies that he's ever been portrayed in, he's either been captured or killed or put down in some kind of way. He is very more susceptible to human technology than Godzilla is. So does it lead it to an actual more one-on-one fight? But the one that is being portrayed currently, which is, I think he's like the biggest one so far, if I'm not mistaken, and I also think it's the biggest Kong as well that we have seen. So just kind of keep that in mind, and we'll see what happens. One thing I will say about this movie is that it was a very good movie all around in general. Now, I'm not too sure if he would be a type of monster to face Godzilla and win with an upcoming movie that's coming up. I'm not too sure. I just know that Godzilla can take a lot of damage. He can, take nukes, missiles. It doesn't matter what you shoot at him. He can pretty much stand in the middle of it and take down buildings. And King Kong, on the other hand, he can destroy a building, but not as fast. And he's not as strong as Godzilla when it comes to man-made items like bullets and missiles and stuff like that. He will go down eventually, and he can be beat. Like, if you drop the nuke on King Kong, that'd be night-night. But at the end of the day, I think it'd be a fun fight. It'd be a good fight. I would love to see how they're going to do it. And on top of that, I think this is like one of the bigger King Kongs, or King Kong finally fully grown. And not only is he grown, but we can also see the intelligence of King Kong with as big as he is now. Now, I am going to do probably a review of the trailer that just came out. So just be watching out for that. But comment down below and let me know what you think. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button. And if you want to see more, I will see you next time. Have a great day. Peace.